So, hello everyone. Happy Friday. I'm joined by the one and only watermelon shirt over here. So we're gonna wait for a few people to start trickling in, and then we'll go more into like the news stories and stuff. Yes, I think first and foremost, we're covering how we all know that your phone is spying on you. Yes. Yes. Yeah, well, that's the thing is like the whole like meme slash trope about spying on you. It's a way of like anything that's like a meme or in joke kind of gets more like stickiness to it, right? And especially because regarding the phone thing, that's like a lot. This is a big part of people's lives, much more than the computer. So people doing the whole it's a way for people to kind of focus on what really matters in a kind of like a fun sort of a way.
If they do anything that is like a terrible privacy violation. Joelle made this awesome meme. There's a picture of Snowden, but there's like a single tear and it just says, please, bro. And it's
Yes.
really good. So I'm going to make that onto a t-shirt as well.
Okay, well, apparently there was an audio issue on your end, but I think that's fixed. Someone, he said we're good now. Okay, good. Yeah,
We're
it
good
just,
now?
it's in my rush to get my little espresso. I unfortunately made the mistake of turning on my headphones too late, and so because of that, it didn't get picked up automatically. I had to fix it, but we should be good. So you guys just missed out some awesome freaking banter, but you know what's funny? The audio only version of this, people get so mad if I leave the banter in. They're just like,
Really?
they get so mad. They're just like, let's get to this. They don't
Let's
like
cut
the
to
whole.
the chase. So my audio is good now, right?
Should be. That's
Should
what
be?
Brian Kanachi says. I don't know if you know who that guy is. Hi, Brian.
Tell us if not,
Brian,
everyone.
did you know that your phone is spying on you? Because if not, this is where you're going to learn. You're going to learn today.
We'll learn today.
All right. So enough of this stuff. Let's roll the official intro and then just get on into this, guys. Hey everyone, and happy Friday. Welcome to the Digital Cash Rundown. I'm joined by the one and only, as far as I know, Naomi Brockwell, privacy advocate and spreader of information of how your phone is spying on you.
Spreader of information.
I didn't say mis, dis, or malinformation, so you're good.
Oh, good. Well, we all know it's better to have like a central authority determining those things because that's how truth works.
Yeah, apparently we're going over a little bit of that stuff today. Let me just point out real quick. If you have one of my NFTs, you are in my Discord, and you can just go to the Digital Cash Rundown channel and type into the super chat, and then their stuff goes like that, and it's awesome. If you don't, you can go to the eChat, the cointr.ee/the desert links, and you leave a little donation, and then your little chat can pop up, and I'll put that on the screen. So just so you guys know, also with the CoinTree stuff, make sure you get that in like not like 10 minutes before the end of the show, because it might take a while for that to kick in. And anyway, before we get into the phone stuff, let me just make sure the phone stuff. It might be a good time to start on. It decided to go on that one. All right, well, we'll start with this one then. So, NFTs minted on FTX break, highlighting Web 2 hosting flaws. NFTs hosted on FTX's platform were affected by the firm's collapse, showing blank images instead of the original art. First off, I didn't know FTX had an NFT platform. Maybe I'm a boomer or something, but I just thought like, oh, OpenSea and stuff. But
Yeah.
I should note, everyone who gets one of my NFTs, all the images are on IPFS, and I, depending on the one, there's some nuance to it, but basically, I think that Rarible automatically puts the stuff on IPFS. However, there have been some cases where the IPFS pin gets removed, and so it kind of has the same sort of thing. So what you can do is, from my knowledge, of course, watch for the video when I go into detail about this stuff, but you should be able to mint with Rarible and then take your IPFS and pin it yourself. Pin it yourself through something like Pinata Cloud or whatever, and then you're good. But it's kind of funny how the FTX thing really messed a lot of people up, obviously, and people losing their NFTs is the least of all these things. But I think that the contagion kind of effect of FTX might be forcing the space to grow up a little bit,
Well, I mean, when NFTs first came out, it was important to let people know what they actually were, because I saw a lot of people. I mean, going back to the misinformation thing, I do think that there were a lot of people out there misrepresenting what they are, talking about these immutable things that could never disappear off the internet, and they're in the blockchain and yada yada. And so I put together a piece on my channel that was like, hey, actually, this is what's going on under the hood. Usually it's just a bit of code that links to a website, and whoever controls that website controls whatever image displays on that website. And if that company ever goes bankrupt or out of business, whatever, or if they decide to just shut down for whatever reason, your image will disappear. So this is like a link to something. And that's not great if you're thinking about this in terms of an image that's always going to be around, because it's just not. And FTX, being such a huge platform now disappearing, is such a great example of why NFTs and their design are quite flawed in that respect. And Joelle, you brought up a great point about how there are ways around this. NFTs don't have to be flawed. There are ways that you can have uncensorable material out there that's linked to this, your NFT token, and using things like IPFS is a great way to do that, using things like Arweave or Pinata, whatever you called it, Joelle, which basically, I mean, the reason why IPFS isn't always foolproof is because your things are being stored on multiple computers, servers all around the world, until someone decides to not do it. And generally they decide to not store this because it's something that hasn't been accessed in a while, or they need to free up space or whatever. It's just not a priority. So they can drop things from their systems. And a good way that you can keep this in the system is to basically ping it every now and again. And there are systems that you can use to do this. And Joelle mentioned one. And this is a much more robust way to host things in this decentralized manner. And the problem is that when NFTs first came around, no one was talking about that. And no one was talking about the weaknesses and how this stuff could disappear. So it's, it is kind of a gloating moment for people who are like, guys, there are major flaws in this Web3 system, and we're relying on a lot of, centralized players when we're pretending this is a decentralized space. And now people's NFTs have gone missing. They probably spent a bunch of money on them, thinking FTX was solid, and now they don't have access to their stuff anymore. So it's a good learning moment, shall we call it?
Yeah, the thing is with NFTs, they're so relatively new as far as the technology, and they're evolving extremely fast. I remember talking about all these kinds of hypothetical use cases that they're going to be able to do this and that, and then before you know it, there's all these things already baked into them. The space is growing way faster. I mean, I don't know how it is post boom, but I know it's growing quite faster than most of the crypto space. And I mean, in the early days, obviously you just had the hosting on OpenSea or whatever it was, and then it just your broken JPEGs were a real thing. And then the next thing was, let's just pin it on IPFS, which is what I'm doing right now, which is Great, better than nothing. It's still like, to make it truly censorship resistant, though, it's still like an extra step of things to do. And that's a thing that, like, then you say, like, what if you had a blockchain system that had the actual storage on the blockchain itself? And that sounds all nice and great. The problem is there's just so much extra trouble with that. So, for example, right now, or not for the initial release, but for subsequent releases of the Dash platform, the data contract platform that's hopefully coming out pretty soon, that was one discussion metric, is like there's decentralized data storage built into this network now. Now, it's a very small amount to where it's not big enough to be like movies and pictures and all this kind of stuff yet, but it might be at some point. And the idea is like, what happens if people post truly objectionable material on that? And then like now the Mastodon network has to like be hosting horrible things. Oh, but then you need moderators to censor it. And then it's just like, it becomes this like big morass of like ethical issues, and like, how do you remain censorship resistant while also not having to host truly objectionable stuff on your computer where people can go get you? And so IPFS is kind of like Wild Westy on this, where just anyone hosts a little thing here and there, and anyone can just drop the pin or not do whatever. But it's not smooth. And so the holy grail of crypto decentralized storage here, which is what's missing from NFTs, the integrated kind of thing, is something that's like a one-click mint with the NFT, and then you don't have to run around doing a bunch of other steps, and you won't be censored. And all that just isn't there quite yet.
I think the lesson from this is that decentralization is hard, freedom is hard, privacy is hard, but that is why we're here, because we enjoy the process, we enjoy the battle, and it is worth fighting for. So,
yeah. Real quick, we did get a couple of super chats. So one time he crossed this out. He says, on YouTube, we can't hear Naomi's audio. That was in the very beginning. Since the show officially started, he'd been fine. SVN or Esteban said, break a leg, guys. Now, he's a good dude, because he is living entirely off of crypto, closed his bank account, which is great.
Oh, cool.
And his company pays over half of its employees entirely in Bitcoin. So
that's really cool.
It's one of those like unsung heroes of that kind of the actual like living on crypto space. Let's get to this Twitter story. So this has been kind of the talk of the town for a little while, the last couple of weeks at least. But Barry Weiss, a journalist, is one of the two who got the exclusive scoop from Elon Musk about the Twitter files. And this installment that came out, I believe it was yesterday, had kind of dove deep into the Twitter's secret blacklist. And there's just tons of this kind of stuff. You just look at Barry Weiss's Twitter to go through it. But basically, Twitter selectively, I should say, the terminology is kind of it varies, but like shadow banned, deboosted, whatever else, basically hid content from users without letting them know, or the rest of the Twitter user base know. Let them know without letting them know. They hid their content that was considered objectionable or controversial, such as, for example, take the example of Stanford's Dr. J, I'm not going to say his name, butcher him, whatever, who argued that the COVID lockdowns would harm children. Twitter secretly placed him on the Trends blacklist, which prevented his tweets from trending. Dan Boninjo, of course, him too. Charlie Kirk got do not amplify. And there's this like, you could see there's like a panel here that's screenshotted.
I want to know what mine says.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? You might be able to soon.
Do not amplify. Naomi Brockwell. Dangerous, subversive privacy content.
Yes.
Do not amplify Joel Valenzuela. He talks too much about how you can regain control over your money and your life. I think it's going to be fascinating when that information comes out, because Elon did say that he's thinking of releasing a version where you will be able to see transparently whatever tags have been put on your account, and this will enable you to appeal them, yada, yada, yada. So that's exciting. But I think there are two really interesting things that came out of this that I think are worth just kind of diving into. The first one was like, if you go back to that that tweet that showed the dashboard that Twitter employees can see, it shocked so many people because everyone's pointing out all these other things and the tags and whatnot. But then if you look to the left of the screen on that dashboard, there's a tab that says private messages, right?
Yeah,
and so many people were like, oh my God, Twitter can read our private messages. And it's like, where have you guys been? Of course they can read your private messages. They're not end-to-end encrypted. That's what this whole debate is about. That's why people use technical terms like end-to-end encryption, because it has meaning. The technical, jargon that you hear is actually referring to that very real dashboard where Twitter can just click on a tab and see all of your private communications. That's what happens when things are not end-to-end encrypted. When you allow companies to be a pass-through for your messages and it's all in the clear and they can see it all, it's all in the clear and they can see it all, right? So that was the first thing that I thought was fascinating, how many people were just like, oh my God, this is a shocking revelation.
Did you know
that Twitter is spying on you? Yeah, no, I'm hoping that this like very tangible screenshot helps people kind of conceptualize an abstract concept that is your privacy. I'm really hoping that it makes them kind of realize how this personally affects them, that all of their private communications, I'm sure people are saying very sensitive stuff in their tweets, in their Twitter DMs. I'm hopeful that this just brings it home how important end-to-end encryption is when it comes to private communications. The other thing I wanted to point out, and it was from Andresen. Let me just bring up his tweet. I won't be able to show you on the screen, but maybe I can send it to you, Joel, and you can bring that up on your end.
Yeah,
but he's just bringing up
if you send it to me via Twitter DM.
Yeah, I'm going to send it to you.
I'm not joking. If you do send it via Twitter DM, it'll be easy. This is all a live stream show anyways. It's not like we're hiding anything.
All right, so Joel Valenzuela. All right, I'm sending you that first tweet there, but there's like a string of tweets. So I'm just going to go down a little rabbit hole showing you these tweets. So the first one he said was, the big question is, has any arm of the US government been illegally and unconstitutionally outsourcing violations of citizens' guaranteed rights under the First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment to private entities, right? And then he says in response to that, there have been a variety of ways that this could happen. Coercion, funding, and seconding of staff jump immediately to mind. The private entity may be a victim or a co-conspirator. And that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing Twitter in kind of this middle realm of, yeah, they're being strong-armed by the government. Also, there are clearly people in the organization that were very complicit in this happening. And you've just got this awful incestuous relationship between the private and public sectors here. And he goes on to say, any private entity that has been doing this should move to preserve all relevant records and files immediately. And I feel like there is this momentum right now behind transparency regarding what some of these companies have been up to. Because for so long, it's kind of like this unspoken thing that's going on where the government can say like, well, we have an antitrust lawsuit hanging over your head. We could go down that avenue, or you could just remove these accounts and, stop this misinformation and, mold this narrative or whatever their demands may be. And you've had companies being so complicit in this. And even when there is no strong arming involved, you've seen people like, oh my gosh, reading through these Twitter drops of all of these private conversations about inner workings of this censorship. People have been so eager to shut down people that they disagree with and censor them and control the narrative and stop discussion about entire topic. Like it's egregious. It's really egregious. So anyway, Mark Andresen goes on to say, like, if you are one of these companies and you're potentially a whistleblower, you should start collecting your information now, because now that Twitter has gone public with this stuff, you can bet that there will be whistleblowers out there who will be inspired to do the same. So if you know of this stuff going on, you better start collecting this material before the company erases it. because I imagine that the government has had their tentacles in a lot of companies when it comes to censorship, etc. So anyway, Mark finishes by saying, this includes government-funded nonprofit and academic entities, not just companies, by the way. There will be serious questions around how illegal coercion flowed from the government and who acted as a paid arm or agent of the government. And it is kind of this reckoning that's happening. I feel like the balance of power for so long has been on the side of the censors, because even with private companies, the government has so many ways that they can leverage these companies and coerce them and all of this without even threatening them. A lot of it could just be implicit threats. And now that Elon has kind of started to pave the way with radical transparency, I think other companies might follow. So I got pretty fired up reading this tweet from Mark Andreessen. And for the first time in a while, I've been hopeful, about the path of censorship, because it does seem like a lot of people are starting to say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's pull back the curtain and discuss why this is not okay.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely true. It's crazy. The thing about this is one thing where conspiracy theorists kind of drive me nuts a little bit, because of the kind of simplistic way of viewing the world. Like everyone's in bed with everyone. Like Klaus Schwab sends out a mass DM and says, delete Naomi's tweet. Like that's never happening. That's not how it happens. And it's not even, I think it was one of the most illuminating things. It wasn't even in this Twitter thing. It was Mark Zuckerberg himself talking about how the FBI came to Facebook about the laptop story, and they didn't. And here's the thing that we know of, right? There was no, they did not order Facebook to do anything. They did not imply any threats, as far as I know. There was nothing explicit hanging over their head of like, well, we're already in trouble with the government, we have to play nice. Like, not really. It was just when the FBI talks to you and says you should, the natural inclination, whether it's an actual threat or not, it's just like the mafia, right? They don't have to threaten to break your legs to get their protection money. They just talk to you and you're like, I guess this is the way it's done. These guys look powerful. And it's not until things happen. So that's where it gets legally tricky too, because I'm sure you could sue the government's ass off for going and doing clearly illegal things. But for just saying, heads up, Facebook, there's this story coming through. Never mind. Are you going to be able to sue them successfully for that? Like, I don't know. Maybe not, but it'd be very difficult.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the laptop stuff. They had FBI on site at Twitter during the election and leading up to the election to immediately purge misinformation. Can you imagine being like this private company and then having the FBI there monitoring what information was allowed to be shared about that election and like demanding that certain things get purged? Like, this is a really dystopic like turn of events. I mean, we all knew that this was happening. We all predicted this was happening. We knew that there's a lot of cooperation between government and whatever. But to get these very visceral examples of, yes, the FBI was on site a whole day during the election to purge misinformation, it's pretty shocking to just see it laid out plainly like that.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? It's just like during the remodel of your house or whatever, that then the police are just there, just hanging out. It's just like, can you get off my lawn, please? Get out of here. And the problem is like, who at Twitter is going to be like, excuse me, this is inappropriate. Please leave.
This is inappropriate.
And but no, it's that kind of escalation. It's just like, they've already escalated it. But if you decide to try to get rid of it, you're the one escalating, and it becomes kind of an issue. And that's the thing, is like, it circles back to leadership and I guess like courage in that sense. There was something I did want to highlight out of this thing, unfortunately. So Barry White said, this secret group included head of legal policy and trust, Vijaya Gaddy, or however you say her name, the evil lady, global head in trust and safety, Yoel Roth, subsequent CEOs, Jack Dorsey and Parag Agrawal, and others. So Jack was complicit at least a little bit in this. And I am personally, knowing how this stuff works, I'm willing to give him some leeway, willing to say, look, he never wanted it to become this way. they went around him a whole lot, as was kind of revealed. Like a lot of decisions went around. He did protest a lot when he did it, but this is still his company. This was his company.
Yeah.
He could have done a lot more. He was I would say partially complicit in a lot of the censorship, and he's the darling of the specifically the Bitcoiner world now because he's doing all this other stuff. And I get that he's kind of more free to do what he really wants to do, and I get that he didn't have 100% control back in the waning days of his tenure at Twitter, but I think he owes us an apology specifically. I think.
Well, I give him a little bit more slack than most people. I think that for the most part, he's been a force for good, and people are going to be like, rah, 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 Naomi, why did you say that? I'll lay it out. So, I mean, he's literally tweeted out like material written by Rothbard. He literally tweeted out the PDF of Anatomy of State. That one tweet alone, hundreds of millions of people, you know, probably did wonders for getting people to think about individual sovereignty, etc. On top of that, he has been very vocal in hearings with Congress saying, you know, Twitter should not have the ability to censor people. The government should not have the ability to censor people. You know, that's why we're building these decentralized offerings and putting a lot of resources into that. So I mean, we can't just look at Jack versus Elon because it's very different situations. Jack was part of a public company where there is a board and the CEO doesn't have power. The CEO could be fired at any time. It is not his company. Whereas Elon is now the owner of this company. He doesn't have to kowtow to any board members. And when you have boards ruling these things, the CEO's hands really are more tied than most people realize. You know, we forget, like, Steve Jobs got fired from his own company that he created for this exact reason, because the board had more power than he did and said, "Nah, Steve, you're a liability, get out." So I think it's worthwhile just keeping in mind that it was a very different situation. But I still hear what you're saying. And I still do think, you know, he, to a certain degree, did know what was going on. I think that when that stuff started to happen, he did become more vocal in Congress against censorship. So it was maybe his outlet of saying, like, this is how I push back. I mean, I'm not giving him all the slack in the world. I think he could have pushed back more. I wasn't there. I don't know how much he did push back, but it seems that he knew about a bunch of stuff. He probably wasn't as brave as someone like Elon, but I think for the most part, he is not. I don't think he's like the head of safety and security or whatever it was. That, like, I mean, these guys were the egregious offenders, and I think it's convenient for a lot of people to put the blame on Jack because he's the very public figurehead. But clearly, this impetus wasn't coming from him, and he did lack control. He could have probably done more, but I'm not going to jump on the witch hunt of, like, Jack is to blame and should have said no, because I feel like it's probably a lot more complicated.
Absolutely. It's a lot more complicated. And speaking of the board stuff, that did remind me of when Elon was first looking into his acquisition, and then all of a sudden the Saudis freaked out. And they're like, what? Where did this come from? Maybe there's some powerful people on the board. That also kind of ties back into I guess how, like, the Elon Musk suicide watch, like how long until he gets suicide? Like, here's the thing. This man, I got it. This person is the richest, possibly the most influential person on the planet. He's up there. He's one of the top 5, I think, like, single people that we know of. There might be a lot more behind the scenes, right? But he's up there. And he was just the electric car guy, kind of, for a little while. And people didn't, like, now he's almost like an activist. And it's kind of telling that it takes being almost the most powerful man on the planet to be an activist against the system and not get offed, kind of.
Yeah, thing. And, like, there's no guarantee that he is safe. Like, it's scary, and you make a great point that he has to be the richest man in the world and have a lot of connections to be able to withstand this. And that's why it's so dangerous to give the government more power voluntarily, because they could so easily take it themselves. There needs to be a pushback against that, and it takes people who not only are rich and powerful and well-connected and all that, they have to be principled and like freedom of speech and actually want to, spend a large amount of their time on this issue. So it's like you take someone like Elon Musk and there are a lot of people. Elon's not the only one. There are a lot of people in Silicon Valley in particular who are leading major companies and doing great work, pushing for privacy and civil liberties and all of that. But yeah, it's it's a great point that it is pretty telling about the state of things.
Yeah, and we I think that there's a very few people who have stood that much in the face of everything and are still kind of around. And like Snowden's the only other big one I can think of where he did one of the most risky things a human being can do, other than jump off a cliff with no parachute. Like it was pretty up there. Yet he structured his escape and everything in a way where he probably thought he'd have the highest chance possible of surviving and being free long term. And he still can't come home and stuff, which is really sad. But at least he's out there. And I think that people like Elon Musk must have seen that and been like, I need to wait to do this. And it's kind of hard because in order to be like I care about stuff like freedom and privacy and stuff like that. I don't really care about making obscene amounts of money. I just, if someone gave it to me, who cares? But like, I don't, CoinTR.e such those links if you want to, but like, I don't really care. It's like the discipline of someone to be like, I am going to carefully construct as much, I guess like power and influence and wealth as possible. And then I'm going to risk it all on this activist mission. It's like it's kind of a unicorn standpoint. Usually you have like a one or the other, like, someone who builds up something giant and just, that's because that's what they really wanted, or an activist who doesn't have the power to really follow through. And then it's kind of really rare you get a couple of unicorn cases like that.
Yeah, well, it's not clear whether Elon was playing 5D chess or whatever in this, but it is clear that he is now galvanized. Like whatever has caused it, he is now galvanized to action. And it's quite refreshing to see someone who just doesn't care about kowtowing to the power structures in society. He is just like, yes, I am going to tweet an eggplant to that politician. And it's just refreshing to just see him be like, what? This is the guy who's like one of the most important entrepreneurs of our generation. And he's just like tweeting these ridiculously dumb memes. Like, I just find it so refreshing because we're used to a world. Yeah, we're used to a world where people are treading on eggshells and kowtowing to everyone and so afraid of the cancel culture that they are just so diplomatic in everything that they say because, any slight misconception of their words can just lead to, this entire mobilized movement against them. Who causes the mobilization? I mean, that's a whole nother story. But Elon is just like, oh, they're mobilizing. Cool. Here's another meme. And like, he just doesn't care. And he's doing such cool things. Like, that's the other thing. Let's talk about this. Right now, we just started off the segment talking about FTX, talking about Sam Bankman-Fried, talking about the giant corruption, and we haven't even dived into the details of all of that. Yeah. But so many people who lost their money and were just so badly hurt by this. I have a friend who lost all of his life savings. Why they were stored in the exchange, we'll debate that another time, but he still lost them. And, my heart breaks for that situation. And you have regulators like Maxine Waters tweeting out things like, thank you so much, Sam Bankman-Fried. It was so refreshing to have you in. We really appreciate your time. Really looking forward to working through this with you. And meanwhile, you've got Elon Musk, who's like, sending us to Mars and creating all these awesome tools for renewable energy and battery-powered cars and homes and Neuralinks and free speech. And meanwhile, he's like creating housing inside Twitter, and California's like, we need to investigate him. We need to investigate him to make sure that the living standards inside the Twitter headquarters are up to scratch. And meanwhile,
While they step over homeless camps to get
there. While you step over syringes and feces in the middle of like the uptown areas,
folks.
In not hyperbole. If you like, I used to live in San Francisco, and it's a dangerous city. It's so much worse than when I was there, and it is like they're just. The homeless issue is terrible. There are like people without houses everywhere, just living in encampments all over the streets. It's incredibly dangerous. And they're investigating Elon Musk for putting like these lovely little apartments inside Twitter headquarters. Like the whole thing is so ridiculous. And now they're investigating him for the Neuralink stuff as well. I mean, it's so egregiously transparent how corrupt all of this stuff is that they would rather go after someone like Elon when, like from what I've read, all of their practices at Neuralink have gone above and beyond when it comes to like safety and ethics and all of that. Yet they're investigating him rather than someone like Sam Bankman-Fried, who is the second largest donor to the Democratic Party, one of the largest donors to the Republican Party. And there are a lot of politicians in this guy's pocket. And lo and behold, he's not the one that they're currently going after in the press and in their investigations and stuff. Like it's egregious and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and it's kind of goes back to the whole what we're trying to do in building decentralized systems and stuff, because the justice system or whatever, the government, all this kind of stuff, it's very much at the whims of whoever uses it, despite supposedly being clear rights and laws being written down. Justice system. And it's pretty insane to see just how crazy that is, or whatever. The government, all this kind of stuff. It's very much at the whims of whoever uses it, despite it's pretty nuts. Supposedly,
I mean, the whole situation is egregious and so blatantly like politically charged and corrupt, and I'm sickened by it all and just grateful that there are people now pushing back for transparency. I think that's the best thing we can have. The more information we can have as a society, the better. We don't want central rulers controlling the narrative. We don't want them controlling what isn't considered truth. We don't want that. We want information out there and let discerning people act like adults and use their own minds to make up these, figure these things out. And so I'm glad that people like Mark Andreessen pushing towards that, and Elon Musk pushing towards that, and a lot of other people.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a super chat question here, which is a little slightly off topic, but still, from Esteban. He says, questions for Naomi. 1, help with the privacy noise. I'm not sure.
Noise.
I'm not sure if that's like noise or whatever. Anyway, do you think you could make a video about how to do privacy impact assessment, PIA? So that's question 1. Oh, novice.
Are we going through all of them first, or novice?
Yeah, I guess we might as well go through all of them. So, 2, for people who don't have the financial resources to buy new mobile devices and laptops, is it still possible for them to regain/maintain privacy? And 3, is it still possible for someone to use their name on social platforms like Twitter and still remain privacy?
Still remain privacy. Still maintain privacy. Yeah. Okay, so I think, I have a bunch of videos for beginners on my channel just to figure out like what are some big steps that you can take. In terms of doing like an in-depth risk analysis, it's really, really tricky. There are definitely companies that can do that. You can hire Red Hat teams to come in and try to infiltrate your setup and then tell you where your weaknesses are. That requires money, of course. But I think like just the big steps, just have a look through all the really, really products you're using. Be mindful of how they treat your privacy. Are they logging everything you do? Is it end-to-end encrypted? Making a simple transition from something like Gmail to Proton Mail goes a long way to protecting your privacy. Making a simple transition from something like Facebook Messenger or Twitter DMs to something like Signal goes a long way to protecting your privacy. Just be mindful of which companies can see your information in the clear, kind of have access to it, and which companies don't, and just start to opt for the better choices. I would say eradicate Google from your life if you can. Google has some great products out there. They're super streamlined, awesome. But there are some really good products out there that are starting to become comparable and are far more respecting of your privacy. So start to explore them. You know, watch Joel's videos on Odyssey instead of YouTube if you're currently tuned in on YouTube. He actually makes more money that way as well. But it's, it's just important to start be cognizant of that before you download any apps onto your phone. What permissions are they requiring? Get out of the brain dead mindset of just clicking OK to every pop-up, which is what tech has trained us to do. We don't even read these things anymore. But these things are important, and you are installing apps that are way too invasive on your phone. You need to look at that, clock app and say, well, this needs access to your camera. And you need to ask why. If you're downloading that VPN app and it says we need your precise location. No, it doesn't. A good VPN needs very little requirement in order to run. It doesn't need access to your Bluetooth devices. It may not be nefarious that they're accessing that, but there's no way to prove either way. And a good way to protect yourself is just to opt for the leanest products that don't require any of those permissions. So just starting to make choices like that.
I have to give a shout out to Brave Browser on this as well. Obviously, Brave is great. Oops, let me move over here. Obviously, Brave is great for a lot of things, but it's kind of crazy. It's almost more of an educational tool than like an actual browser in some ways, because, like, for example, I went to the Home Depot website the other day because I'm doing like home renovation stuff, and I noticed Brave had a little notice there. It said, location access denied, because the site was trying to get your location. Of course, they're trying to find a store near you. That makes sense. But then the other one here was sensors blocked. This site has been blocked from accessing your motion sensors. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a little weird, isn't it? Right?
All of these websites are getting access to so much data. The hardware you're using is getting access to data. Figuring out which operating system you're using, how much telemetry is being sent off about your activities. It's time that we all become more aware consumers. I don't expect everyone to become an expert in tech, but the thing is, you don't need to be an expert to just read a pop-up that says, I'm asking for permission to your camera. Do you grant it? Like, no, I don't particularly want this app to get access to my camera. If you click deny and it says, well, you can't use the app, well, maybe it's time to find a replacement service. So you don't need to have a super familiar understanding of underlying protocols of the internet to start making more informed choices about the tools that you're using. What were some of the other questions that were in that comment, Joel?
Let me hit back over here. There's a bunch of other stuff happening too. So is it still possible for someone to use their name? It got scrolled up. Basically, is it still possible to use your name on Twitter and preserve some privacy?
Well, it depends what kind of privacy you want to preserve. You are using a public
either
forum,
or it's not always on, or it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, there are ways that you can increase privacy on Twitter. So, for example, I don't have Twitter on a mobile phone that I carry around with me. I don't need to have Twitter with me everywhere I go. If I think of a great tweet, I can save it till I get home, right? The benefit of that is that I'm stopping the app getting access to other activities I do on the phone, to GPS, to all kinds of data that it requires in order to operate. So I silo a lot of apps on old devices, and I silo them away from each other. And if you have an old device that you can keep at home that you want to put a social media app on, that's probably a good way to do it rather than just carrying it around in your back pocket. That's a way to give you more privacy in that regard. Obviously, turn off geolocation when you're using the app. If you have to sign up and give them a telephone number, obviously don't give them your real telephone number. Unfortunately, Twitter is one of the awful ones that doesn't accept VoIP numbers for sign up. But honestly, if you're in the United States, you can go to the store and buy a SIM card with a phone number for $5. You could then translate that to Google Voice.
The SIM on my phone never touched fiat and never got associated with my real name. So it will be aware that there are other ways that your privacy can still be
invaded. So for example, if you were to buy a SIM that was not put in your name or anything, and you just use it for this sign up, you can then transfer that to Google Voice. And a lot of people will be like, Google, why do I want to be involved with that? Is because you could port that to Google Voice and you will in perpetuity have access to that number without paying another cent. That's a very good reason. So that is a way to disassociate unique identifiers like your telephone number with every account that you open. You don't necessarily want someone being able to go on the dark web and doing a search for your telephone number and finding every account that you have access to. So creating those unique numbers and then just sending them to Google Voice is probably fine to do. You can port them to other services too if you don't like Google Voice, Twilio, Telnix, MySudo, but be aware that you will be paying money for all of those. So if you plan on having like 40 different numbers, it can get expensive. So that's why Google Voice can be a good tool there. And especially if it's not a number that you're using, that you're not, passing data through, then, it's really not a huge concern that they have that number. But the other thing, email. People use their personal email as a unique identifier on everything, at the doctor's office and at every account and every social media company they sign up for, and with their family and friends and with their work. And that's just a terrible privacy practice. And you should have unique emails for everything. And that doesn't mean you have to set up these in advance. You can just use email alias services like Simple Login. You could just use catch-all emails for domains that you own. There are lots of ways that you can do this, but I think it is important for us to get out of the mindset of, this is my one number, this is my one email, and I will tell every company and every activity I participate in these same unique identifiers. We just don't need to do that. We can silo sections of our life and be a lot more private because of it.
Yeah, and let me touch on the social media thing. A lot of people I have been a semi-public figure for a very long time, and obviously, but part of what I do is just, it's not really a technological kind of advice, but everything, I do watch what I say carefully, not because I kind of assume it's public info. Like if I call someone a mean thing, everyone should probably knows that. And like the only things that, like, obviously private in-person voice conversations, obviously I treat a little bit differently, but even then they could be spied on, and I just have the devices in another room if that's although there's way more you could and probably should be doing. But that's kind of the point with like social media. I notice a lot of people, I actually think that as far as the content you put out there, not as far as like you sign up with a phone number, your real name or whatever, but as far as the posting you do on social media, I personally prefer, if you're anybody, unless you have a risk that keeps you from doing it, I prefer to post under my real identity, because when you don't and you think you're like anonymous or pseudonymous or whatever, you can start to leak. Your behavior starts to kind of change a little bit. You start to say things in a different way. I've noticed this with like the way people interact and stuff like that versus, things. And a lot of times you can kind of build up a whole lot of like stuff you don't want associated with your real name. And at some point there's going to be an internet sleuth who's going to look through all your stuff, correlate some stuff, and go, I got you, and then kind of get you in trouble. So if you can freely speak your opinion, like you're not in a job or something where you can't whatever, I would do it under your identity, because that disciplines yourself into making sure that you're not oversharing on Twitter because you're saying like, hey, I live in this town, or like, you're not going to do that if it's associated with yourself. But if you divulge a bunch of like, I'm anonymous, well, I'm going to have to find this for the next show, but there's some lady on TikTok, which is, a great privacy preserving platform, that what she does is, her whole shtick is users comment on her videos and she doxes them. That's literally her whole shtick. And have you seen any of those ones?
Yeah, no, they're awesome, and it's so illuminating because the people, until they've actually tried to find things about themselves, probably don't realize how much information about themselves is out there, and how much, like OSINT, meaning like open source intelligence, meaning the aggregation of every single thing ever put online about us ever that is accessible. Like, you can find out anything at all. And I think like the biggest takeaway from your point, Joelle, like whether you choose to be anonymous or in your real name online, like it doesn't matter, like whatever, your choice. But it's super important not to have that false sense of security. You are not anonymous on these platforms. It is so easy to find out who you are. And it is so difficult to be airtight in always masking your IP address, making sure your VPN is always on, there's no data leakage, making sure that DNS is not leaking any information about what you're visiting. Or, there are so many ways that your identity can be tied to like different pieces of OSINT or other factors people could find on the internet. So that false sense of security, you absolutely need to get away from that. If you choose to have an anonymous name on Twitter, I think that's totally your prerogative, as long as you realize exactly what Joel said, that just presume everything you put on the internet, whether you put it out there anonymously or in your real name, it probably be public at some stage and tied to your real identity. So
Yes.
behave accordingly.
Yeah, it's kind of like a general good best practice regarding illegal activity is don't do it, because like it's kind of like assume you'll get busted. And I understand that's a terrible way to live your life. But like obviously sometimes innocent people can do perfectly normal things and be criminalized for it, and that's a different conversation entirely. But as far as like people saying like, well, how do I get away with doing this, or like, well, if I use an encrypted messenger, I can do XYZ illegal thing, right? I'm just like, look, your risk profile is your own risk profile. However, I would assume that someone's watching at all times. Assume that someone will figure it out, and that helps you kind of keep your life in a tighter box, so that it's not like, so that the consequences of the eventual privacy violations are not as dire, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you are filling in those forms at the doctor's office, all of that is being typed into a database that will be hacked, and the doctor will not pay it because they will probably have a backup of their system if they're worth their salt. And so they will be quite happy to not pay ransomware and just have that data be leaked. And this happens every single day. There's a major data breach every single day. So just presume any information you give to any company, even when they tell you that, yes, this will just stay between you and me, they can't control that. They have no control over whether they're going to be hacked or whether there's going to be like a technical breakdown and that stuff gets revealed. So just presume any information that you're giving away about yourself, it will be public, and behave accordingly.
Okay, so let me hit this last, well, for now, super chat thing before you hit the home stretch of the stuff. Question for both of you. Well, first off, the Bitcoin Cash podcast. Hi Jeremy. He just said he sent a coin tree, but the coin tree thing wasn't popping up. A good thing he has my NFT and he's in my Discord. Anyway, has Naomi been following the St. Kitts conference or the Cash tokens upgrade to Bitcoin Cash? How is she feeling about the Bitcoin Cash community at the moment? Where does it need improving? Just a quick.
Where does it need
thing.
Improving? All right. So here's one thing that I would love to see. I've been trying to figure out, like, because I feel like Bitcoin Cash community has always been really superb at creating tools. They're kind of the community that builds those like airdrop tools and builds the coin splitting tools, a bit like they're like physical tools that people can use. I shouldn't say physical, but they are software tools that people can use that are just useful. And I think that's really cool. It just makes crypto a practical part of our lives. And, it helps people like Joel, who are kind of trailblazing on living on crypto. Just that's the stuff that we need to make their lives possible. Tools like, Purse.io, ways that they can buy things online, all of that sort of stuff. So one tool that I would love to see, and I feel like Bitcoin Cash, like I want you guys to build it. All right.
Flipstarter.
It's to do with tips. Like I would love to tip my barista in crypto, and I was for a while, just giving them crypto tips every time I bought. The problem is that I'm literally giving a tip to the person behind the cash register. What about the person who made my meal? What about, the other person who cleaned up after me? What about, there are people who I want to be able to benefit from that, but I'm just paying the person that I'm interacting with. So I would love to see, and one thing that they could do is like pool the resources and then divide it and all that. But it would be cool to be able to just scan a QR code and have that money split into whoever wants to associate their wallet with that, at that cafe or restaurant or whatever. I would love to see something that makes tipping more feasible in just payment splitting, to just like the user just scans one code, sends a couple of dollars, and then that gets split a bunch of addresses. I know that it's feasible on Bitcoin Cash because, BIP70, you've got an innate ability to do all of that stuff. I just haven't seen that tooling. So yeah, I am always looking to the Bitcoin Cash community for the cool tools coming out there. I think it's inspiring to see a community really based on everyday usage. There are very few of those communities out there. I think Dash is another community that really is focused on everyday usage. I think that's how we pull ourselves, extricate ourselves from a very corrupt and controlled and surveilled monetary systems, just by opting out and just using other things every day. I just really enjoy seeing that. So yeah, my takeaway would be, I want to see, the problem is that it's going to be a big effort to move culture to see the same as people like Joel. They like their convenience and they don't really care about extricating themselves or whatever. But I think that if we are to have a culture shift, and we are starting to see the culture changing regarding privacy in particular, if we do want to make that even possible, we do need those tools available. So I really appreciate what these communities are coming out with in terms of tools just for everyday living.
Yeah, well, following on that with Esteban saying, question for both of you. Governments around the world are really clamping down on cash withdrawals and CBDCs. At what point do you think it might be too late to get out of fiat? And he says, by the way, thank you both, Joel and Naomi. You guys helped me transition to living to a semi-fiat free life. So thank you very much. And Esteban's a good buddy of mine now because he's one of those people who watched like our stuff talking about living on crypto, and that pushed him to go do it. So this is a real evidence that what we're doing is not completely in vain. That's because cool. We have awesome people like that popping in and stuff. So when is it too late? What do you think?
When is it too late? So CBDCs are terrifying, and they are as bad as they seem, and people should be aware of them and be afraid of them. But they're not as bad as they could be, because we have alternatives, and we have alternatives that can't be shut down. So I think that, there will come a time, it's not going to be overnight, because even if the government has a law that says we're going to ban all cash, or we're going to ban all Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or Dash or whatever, they have to have that in some sort of a bill. Information has to get out about that. They usually have to vote on it. And even if they vote yes, it's implemented like 2 years down the track. So I don't think that we are in danger of things just happening overnight and being in this Orwellian situation where we can't get access to our funds. I think that, there are so many tools that allow you to live on crypto today. It is definitely viable for you to start, getting out now. Like, it's not too late right now, and you could just start and, be trying to live as much on crypto as you can. It's difficult, especially in a bear market. I totally sympathize with not wanting to spend any crypto. And I think that's totally reasonable. It's just, it's not a matter of there being, this is not like a one variable situation where we're like, okay, privacy is the only important thing, therefore we need to completely opt out right now. Convenience does come into play. Stability does come into play. The fact that the economy is really bad right now does come into play. And it's totally reasonable for a person to factor all of those things in. If we do look at the whole landscape and see like, okay, well, what are the threats right now? Where should I be focusing my attention? I don't think that we are in danger of any snap decision right now. So if you are weighing, convenience higher than other things, I don't blame you. There are definitely other tools you could be focusing on instead of money, to bring convenient privacy into your life. But I would definitely start getting familiar with all of these tools. Whether you take all your money out now or not, I think you should be learning about them. You should be, you should download a Zcash wallet and start trying it. You should see how it works. You should be testing out the tools that allow you to live on crypto coming out of, Dash community and the Bitcoin Cash community. You should be familiarizing yourself with anonymity tools and learning how to use Tor and making sure that you understand, what is private and isn't private in your digital life. I think that's all something you should start to really explore, because you look at what happened in Ukraine, for example, right? Literally overnight, suddenly, you have a foreign force invading. It's a very hostile situation. People have to flee the country, and then they can script all of the male population in that country. And suddenly privacy becomes the top priority, and getting people's money out of bank accounts becomes its top priority, right? And so for the people who are already familiar with this stuff, they could leave and get access to their cryptocurrency, and they were in a much better position than people who weren't. People who understood how to use Tor, if you look at the graphs of usage of Tor and Signal in Ukraine, it spiked tremendously after Russian occupation there. So I think that we shouldn't be waiting for things to become dire before we learn about these tools. We should potentially, be safeguarding some of our assets and hedging in different areas. So maybe we don't get access to all of our money, but we have access to some money in cryptocurrency if things would be bad. Think of it like your digital go bag. You should have in there knowledge that includes being able to navigate your way around a lot of these tools. So I think the best thing you can be doing is just preparing yourself with researching and trying to understand this landscape better, because really freedom is on the line, and it's not inconceivable that it could disappear in a generation. So I think people need to empower themselves. This technology exists. It's cutting edge. It's awesome. It's at our disposal. The future doesn't have to be Orwellian. We can totally avoid that and reclaim our lives. The problem is that this stuff is difficult to understand. It requires people putting in time to learn about it. And I think that time investment is absolutely worth it.
It's absolutely worth it. It's future proofing. That's one thing that the too late thing. Well, first off, I think that there is a point of where it's too late for crypto adoption, like globally, like as far as like the technology itself, is it feasible to use this stuff as money instead? And I think we're past the point where it's too late. Like I believe in I wouldn't say inevitability, but like I believe in the relative inevitability of crypto, of like decentralized crypto, is something that people can use, is an improvement over the previous fiat system for sure. Now, as far as like different countries are obviously different. As far as individuals, I also don't think there's like a too late moment of like when you want to switch to using stuff. The challenge is what of your capital will be left behind. That's the thing that's a little tricky. Is like at some point it'll just become very difficult and cumbersome to try to sell all your fiat assets for crypto assets, and you're going to lose a lot, and they might be banned within certain amounts. They might just not let you or whatever, or your fiat assets might just be stuck and just crashing in value, and you might lose a lot of that value. So there is a certain sense of urgency with that kind of element. At the same time, though, is like for me, it's much easier for me to have certainty about my ability to use crypto than it is for me to have certainty about the purchasing power of said crypto. And so it's kind of opposite. It's kind of funny in the way it's like opposites like that. Like I can use crypto today. I'm going to be able to use it much easier in the future. I'm pretty confident. And anyone can switch at any point during that trajectory, start using something better. As long as crypto's around and people are using it, any individual should be able to use it. The thing is, like, you might get your capital stuck in the fiat world. On the other hand, if you move over to crypto, I'm not going to start sugarcoating. There isn't massive risk at the same time. I think that the risk of having it all in fiat far outweighs the risk of having it all in crypto. The thing is, like, the crypto is like, well, is it going to be up and down? When is it going to be up? Which coin is going to do super well? And it's like, so far, like Bitcoin and Ethereum have outperformed a lot of other things. At the same time, I have very serious, like, fundamental questions about those two, as well as far as like long-term sustainability and stuff. More so sustainability on the Bitcoin side, more so decentralization of the ecosystem and other things on the Ethereum side. But like, listen, life is risk. Just accept it. And just like with privacy, like when you accept that you're a public figure and you live as if you maintain your public output of information as if it's all being watched, it kind of gives you a peace of mind almost. Like I never worry about I'm tweeting the wrong thing because I'm so transparent that my whole life is in a kind of a way where I don't have to worry about people busting me. And the same thing kind of happens with like risk. Risk is everywhere. And unfortunately, the risk-free solution of staying in the fiat world is becoming super risky these days. So I think you at some point you have to find a way to deal with the risk. You have to find a way of like, well, is the crypto going to go way up? Is it going to go way down? What if the coin's the wrong one? Can I switch in time? Like, just be able to figure out the risk and be comfortable with the risk, and then everything is just like, once you become comfortable with the risk isn't as scary. Once you literally like burn your stability, you'll be stable.
Some wise words from Zen master Joel Valenzuela. Yeah, I think that it's difficult because we can't predict the future about anything. But that's not a cop-out. We can't just say, well, we shouldn't try to make the best decision possible with the information we have. We do know that the government is going to continue to inflate away the money. We do know that we have permanently lost 10% of our purchasing power through all of the inflation recently. And that is just, that's not coming back, right? It doesn't matter if inflation goes down from 8% to 4% back down to 2%. It doesn't matter. We've already permanently lost that purchasing power. Prices are not going to come back down. And so knowing that your money that's in your bank account is just losing money at losing value at an astronomical rate, you can make decisions based on that and figure out your own risk parameter. Maybe crypto is too risky for you and you want to put some money into metals, or maybe you want to diversify into other assets. But just figure out what your risk appetite is like and make sure that you're making smart decisions and not keeping a wad of cash in the bank, because it's just not going to be good for you right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that like if you like, I can be sure like my crypto could go to 0 tomorrow, or it could go to 1 million tomorrow, and I don't know, but it's a sure thing that I'm losing even with the lowest interest rates, with the lowest inflation that the Fed targets. If it's 2%, it's a sure thing I'm losing at least 2% of my money every year. So just behave accordingly. I think we can, once we start to really conceptualize what that means and how much money that means is being lost, then it maybe propels us to explore other alternatives. There are a lot of really great alternatives out there. Like one thing that I know that Joel, you do in your community, which is a very like crypto-based community, there are a lot of people who will pay each other in crypto. They will accept crypto. I know a lot of people who will accept crypto and like to pay in crypto, or you go out to dinner with friends and one person pays, but then they pay everyone back in crypto or whatever. They're things that you can start to implement at a smaller scale in your own life. If you buy coffee, ask the barista if they want to be tipped in crypto. These types of things at the very least will normalize the concept that there are alternative payment methods out there. It's a big conceptual shift that has to happen because people for so long have been used to the government having monopoly over the money supply. So just normalizing that concept that we now have alternatives, that'll go a long way. Normalizing the concept that you can use private options will go a long way. That I could make a purchase with privacy coin and not leave a trace of it out there. Like that's empowering to me, right? Yeah, I think that it's I think that just being aware of how far technology has come, what options you have available, is really helpful in your journey of freedom and self-sovereignty and privacy and all those good things.
Living a modern privacy-conscious lifestyle.
Living a modern privacy-conscious lifestyle.
We got a super chat from Onetime, then we got to hit the last couple of these stories. So what do you think the overall result of the FTX disaster will be for crypto? Will it help to spread better understanding of centralization risks and cleanse some of the corruption? Or will FTX just be used as an excuse to create even more corrupt, oppressive regulations and laws? Can DEXs eventually replace SEXs and solve these problems?
There's a lot of questions in there.
My quick answer is yes. So
yes.
I do, working backwards because I'm crazy like that, I think decentralized exchanges can and are replacing centralized exchanges at a frightening pace, a frighteningly awesome pace.
No, a frighteningly exciting pace.
Yes.
It's cool.
And as long as we have fiat, we will not get rid of a centralized exchange because you need that fiat on ramp. And it's just like, but that portion of like our life is going to be like shrinking. Now, will FTX be used as an excuse to create even more corrupt, blah, blah, blah? Yes, I think
Obviously.
so, which is why we have to fight it. And I don't think that whatever gets implemented will be enough to crush the crypto industry. I also think we need to fight literally everything that tries to be implemented. Like not even, what is it like, take from the, give them nothing, but take from them everything. Like the whole 300 like Spartans thing. Mm-hmm. And then will it help to spread a better understanding of the centralization risks and cleanse some of the corruption? Absolutely. I think that's happening right now. And Paul Poi, shout out to Paul, Eric Voorhees, shout out to Eric, have been nonstop on Twitter all the time, just directing that directly into DeFi and decentralized exchanges. And I have been doing the same, but because I'm a little bit more of a jerk than those nice gentlemen are, I've been specifically calling out and getting blocked by Bitcoin maxis for basically saying, if you're true about this, if you're principled about this whole, like, hold your key, not your keys, not your crypto stuff, you will be promoting the usage of decentralized alternatives instead of just like Swan Bitcoin. So no, pick out them, but like, use my centralized custodial platform because it's Maxi approved. It's like, no. Will it help? And then finally, what do you think the overall result is? As a whole, my prescription is, I think it's one of those like healing moments. I think it's going to burn away much more of the bullshit than the good stuff. I think that there's a brief dampening of like it's harder. Like, for example, today, Bitrefill temporarily suspended their U.S. bill pay service, which was unfortunate. And I know that there have been a few other, like for example, the Dash Direct card program in the past, once things got like they got a little too much publicity maybe, and the bank kind of like backed out. And there are some unfortunate chilling effects on the good parts of crypto in the short term, and we can't ignore that. That being said, I think the overall result is burning away all the things that, like, when Peter Schiff tweets some hating stuff about crypto, and I'm reading through his tweets, and like 80% I agree with, and then 20% he's wrong, but like 80%, I think that's what FTX contagion is mostly going to kill. And so in the future, I hope to read Peter Schiff's tweets. As long as he's still a crypto hater, I hope to agree with like 20% of it now. Be like, nah, that was true of the old crypto, not the new one. What do you think?
I agree with everything that you just said. Yes, I think the result of the FTX, I'll keep the comments on so that I can see them. Right. I think the result is exactly what you said. I think that, yes, all of the we have a better understanding of the centralized risks. I mean, I even fell into this trap, right? Because I'm looking around at all of these dodgy lenders who are offering like 5 billion% returns, no risk. And it's like, okay, be careful.
Are you sure that wasn't just like, buying and holding Bitcoin? Right, 178 grand minimum at the end of 2021.
God damn. Sorry. So, the fact like FTX was buying Staples Stadium and had their name on every sports team, and they were buying out the companies that were going bust. So it actually didn't occur to me that FTX might be completely insolvent, and all of that was a front because they were holding all their money in an FTT token where the value could be tanked in a second. So that was even a learning moment for me to just remind myself not to be too complacent, and that so much of this industry is smoke and mirrors. You actually don't know how solvent a lot of these companies are. And that's another reason why DeFi has such a strong future, because you do know how solvent a smart contract is. You can see how much money is being held in reserves. You can see exactly, how much money you'll be able to pull out if you decide to take out your money. And that is so valuable that I hope that this is a learning moment for people, not just trusting a company because they've, got all these famous people in their commercials and they're buying out sports teams. Just make sure that we understand that all of that stuff can easily be fraudulent. It can fool people. People used to think that Enron was this super awesome company that was going gangbusters and making everyone a ton of money. There's so many, like that's how fraud works, right? OneCoin, another example. Everyone just thought it was great because they just look at their bank accounts and thinking, wow, this is going through the roof. So it's a wake-up call that doesn't matter how solid a company seems, you don't really know, and that systems where you do really know are always going to be superior, where you can rely on mathematics to determine the solvency of a company. That's an amazing tool, and obviously consumers, as they become more aware of what that means, are probably going to start to explore those options more. I see a really strong future for DEXs out there, and I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, I think it's also worth noting that there's a certain element of there's a little bit of data I guess we could put on, which I should probably do a whole different podcast and kind of put some charts on the screen. But like, there have been a few of the good projects in crypto have bounced significantly in market cap ranking in the rankings over the last month. So for example, I believe in the last month or so, like Dash went up over 20 spots in CoinMarketCap, and then I looked at the charts, as in the for against Bitcoin charts of Litecoin, of Monero, of Zcash, of Dash, and a couple others, and Bitcoin Cash is on there too. And they've been going up versus Bitcoin. Bitcoin's supposed to be the safe haven at the bottom of the bear market, right? It's supposed to be the good one. But they've all been bouncing, first off, leapfrogging all the crap on the market cap rankings with the FTX. Like, they have not been harmed nearly as bad as like all those. But also even against, Bitcoin, which I think I cannot be too big of a critic of Bitcoin because it's obviously the thing that got us all into the space, and it's built on some very sound things, largely. That being said, it was kind of marketed as, in the last couple years, as kind of a pump and dump a little bit. And this is where when I criticize the maxis, it's that kind of stuff I'm criticizing, not the technology, because I do still use Bitcoin today, right?
Yeah, Bitcoin's cool. I just hate the people who are just such assholes. In general, it's nothing to do with the Bitcoin-ness. So just don't like assholes.
Yes, and so just rather than use Bitcoin for your daily life, like I do, like the whole pumping of it, like the price pumping stuff, and that speculative stuff is cooling off more than these other things. It used to be Bitcoin was the most solid project out there in terms of least fluff in the actual valuation. It's still among the top, but basically to that point, I've noticed a lot of like the utility stuff starting to rise either rise period or like stay stagnant while everything else falls beneath it. And so I do see this FTX shakeout. I expected it to shake out a lot of good projects a lot more than it did. I'm pleasantly surprised at how well a lot of like the better projects have been doing during this whole thing.
No, I'm surprised that Bitcoin's been so resilient through this whole thing. The fact that it didn't go to zero, I mean, that makes me think that it's going to be around forever. Like, we've had such a disastrous, collapse across the industry, and Bitcoin is still really solid. Like, what's the price right now? Is it, I need to reset my ticker right there. But I mean, it's not like it's $100 or $1. Like, it's worth a lot. And so I think that it was just really comforting for me to see that. But yeah.
So lightning round time. So first off, last news story, right? Really quick, because you want to bring this up. Apple's new encryption policy is a huge boom for crypto.
Oh, we have no time for that. We have 10 minutes. So you want to get to your announcement?
All right. So let me switch things up over there. There's this post on the Zcash forums here. What does it say here, real quick? Let me look into that. Obviously, dear Zcash community members, I'm pleased to announce the most recent meeting. The Zcash Grants Committee has unanimously voted to approve this grant proposal. Interesting. Ooh. Which grant proposal? Here we go. Zcash tweet out, the Zcash community is getting a new podcast. The Zcash Community Grants recently awarded a grant for a Zcash specific podcast. It will feature 12 episodes monthly, not 12 per month, 1 per month. It'll be hosted by me on Digital Cash Network. Yay! So
I'm really excited about that. I mean, I think that the Zcash community could like really benefit from more people talking about this. And I'm excited to see you delve into this world, Joel, because honestly, you are a trailblazer in
I'm a
a lot of
strange
ways in
fellow.
crypto. You are someone who so much earlier than anyone else was talking about actually using crypto. You were the one who was out there exploring these tools and saying like, hey guys, here's an episode explaining how you can use it and whether or not it's good or bad, or this is how you incorporate it into your daily lives. And that sort of like hands-on experience is so important for people. It's so helpful because this stuff's scary, and having someone demystify it is truly valuable. But now I think that people are starting to really realize how important privacy is, realize that information on the blockchain, whether it's obscured because it's all mixed together or whatever, is still on the blockchain, and forensics tools are getting better and better, and machine learning is getting better and better, and that data is forever. And even if they can't crack it now, you can bet that in 5 years they're going to be able to combine a lot of that data and de-anonymize a lot of those transactions. So people learning about how to protect their privacy right now is really important, and I think has a lot of momentum behind it. And again, it seems like you're a trailblazer there. You're kind of delving into that privacy world of privacy coins and just saying like, this is something that we should also be aware of and familiarize ourselves with.
Yes, and it's exactly the kind of thing where I've focused laser on, because I'm too dumb to like know what's gonna win, what's not, what, like all this kind of
Sure.
stuff. I just focused laser on the stuff that I think is the most useful and sound fundamentals. And so, I mean, obviously Bitcoin, like why do I care too much about gold if I can't use it to live on? I'm going to live on Bitcoin. And the blocks start getting slow, I'm going to start using Dash. Oh, I still use Dash, all this stuff. And then like, what's the privacy frontier? I have used Monero. I do use Monero. That being said, there's just a lot, and especially, I mean, Zuko sort of sealed the deal when he came over and chatted with me when he visited and stuff. But like, I think that there's a lot of not being talked about in the Zcash world, and way more not being used. Like, let me be clear about that. But
I want to see the Bitcoin Cash community. Like I like my ideal world would be the tooling of the Bitcoin Cash community and the privacy of the Zcash community. Like, let's just have them make a baby so that we can have all these awesome tools for everyday life where we're using zero knowledge proofs at the base layer. Like that's like my dream situation right now. But yeah, sorry, I interrupted there.
yeah, so that's basically yeah. So anyway, let me just finish the announcement thing because we're running out. So Zcash Podcast, it'll be a live like 60, 90-minute about thing every third Friday of the month. Live show with, you know, super chat stuff and all that other good stuff. And yeah, it's going to be a good time. Subscribe to the channel. It's going to be just here. It'll be at 4 p.m. Eastern time, which is an hour after this show. So I'll do a quick rundown thingy those days and then just go on to that stuff. And it's going to be good. Make sure to watch it. It's great. And yeah, real quick, because it's getting up to wrap up time. So everyone who's been on, you know, I like to reward people for doing nice things to me, and it's very nice to have, you know, fun, happy guests on the podcast. So I give everyone a little special, only for guests NFT that gets you into the Discord, so you can go give any kind of comments and stuff. You saw a mix in that super chat from before, a mix of people who have like the like bot like super chat NFT thing, and the people who, that's the proof of stake, right? You give money, you get the thing. The proof of work is you do some work for me by coming on this channel and you get this. So right now I'm doing them for either the Wax blockchain or Polygon. So whichever one you got, you can send me your address and I will send you your NFT, and you'll be able to get into those like super chats and stuff like that on my Discord. And I have a Telegram channel too for the Polygon people. So anyway, I just thought I'd announce that official presentation. Oh, there it is. Yes, useless JPEGs backed up on FTX's private servers.
Backed up. Yeah, final thoughts just as we're closing here.
Yes.
Now, we've all kind of been distracted by FTX and Karen and, all this stuff, and we're just watching what's going on with them and the fraud, there was also a giant hack, the biggest hack, I think, in history, right before that, where the money that they did have all got siphoned out. Do we know anything about that yet? Like, are there people investigating it? Do they have suspects? Is that money being retrieved? Because I feel like no one's talking about that. They're just talking about, let's put SBF in jail. And it's like the money was also stolen by a hacker. I just haven't heard half as many people even mention that.
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing is very telling. Like, I don't think SBF and his situation with FTX is that extraordinary. There's always like greedy scammer people everywhere. Yeah. It's how far he got was telling, but it's the cover-ups that the circling of the wagons amongst the establishments who from this like random crypto degen dude who just like random crypto scammer, like the space, there's always a couple of those here and there. But then it's like a bunch of the world that doesn't care about crypto at all. In fact, demonizes it constantly. Is now like, oh, poor boy. Let's give him a petty. His feelings. How's your anxiety holding up, champ? Like all this kind of like mind-blowing, infuriating stuff. Like, so it's I would hilarious. I'm not very angry about it because I already mentally, years ago, accepted that that's the way the world, that the people in power are evil, despicable, whatever, and there's no justice. I already got to that. So I can't be angry because I expected it. But if I didn't expect this, I would be livid at like people like Russell Brick rotting in a cage. Well, this, what I'll be nice, whatever. Well, this certain individual is just running around in his penthouse in the Bahamas, getting on all these kinds of puff pieces and saying like, oh yeah, it's been really stressful and like all this kind of nonsense. Yeah. And the fact that people are just covering for him, like everyone just like, oh no, it's great. Oh, his girlfriend liked Harry Potter. Isn't that cute? And like, like, okay, this is, I mean, it's basically like the reverse Kanye West, where Ye is. To be fair, Kanye really isn't helping himself out here. But like,
but he also didn't defraud, people of billions of dollars. But I am very angry at how the media has responded to SBF and is patting him on the head. And it just really belies how corrupt all of this world is. And when you read things from these mainstream publications, take it with a grain of salt, because we're getting an insider's view right now that doesn't come along often, but we're really getting insight into how corrupt and fraudulent a lot of this stuff is, and who controls the narrative at a lot of these outlets. So just take everything you read with a grain of salt, guys. Get your news sources from Joel Valenzuela. He comes to you every week in a live show. He's going to be having an extra live show once a month about Zcash. Listen to the people with their feet, who are actually their feet hitting the ground, out there learning about all these tools hands-on, not the people who are in their ivory tower.
Don't forget to watch NBTV to learn how to live a modern, privacy-conscious lifestyle. Show your stuff on your way out.
All right, your data, your money, your life. Empower yourself and become a sovereign individual, and learn all the tools to do it. Thanks, everyone.
NBTV.com, is that where it is?
NBTV.media. Okay. And we're on YouTube. It's Naomi Brockwell TV is the name of the channel. We're on Odyssey. It's Naomi Brockwell. We're on TikTok. I wouldn't recommend you watch TikTok, and we're on Instagram. I wouldn't recommend you watch Instagram. All of that content can be found on Odyssey on our short form channel. If you do feel the need to go use spyware, we're also on the Instagram and TikTok and YouTube on all of those things as well. So check us out.
Yes, and never forget, ladies and gentlemen, your phone
is spying on you.
See you later. Have a good week.